All right, so this video is going to serve as the correction portion of your simplifying rationals test. In order to bring your grade up, you do have to complete all the notes that are in this video and all the examples you have to do on your own. This does not count as a retest, though. You will have to talk to your teacher about doing that as well. So one of the first things we're going to start in are our excluded values, and there is a different name for excluded values that you need to know. So we can call them excluded values. We can also call them restrictions. You might see them as restrictions on the domain, but you do need to know them by both names. There are two steps that we're going to follow. The first one is that you're going to factor the denominator, and then you're going to set those factors equal to 0 and solve for them. So this is the first example. I'm going to do this example with you. You're in charge of doing the next two on your own. So I told you step one was we're going to factor the denominator. Remember that denominator is the bottom portion of your fraction. Since this is an a is equal to 1, I'm going to look at these factors of 14. So when I list them out, I have 1, 14, 2, and 7, but I need them to add up to that middle number of -5. So when I look at that, I am going to use 2 and 7, and it tells me that my 7 is going to be the -1. Since this is the a equals 1, I'm going to go ahead and put them in their parentheses. I didn't do anything with the top, so I'm leaving it as -3x plus 4 over, I now have x plus 2, since the 2 of my factor was positive, times x minus 7, since the 7 of my factors was negative. Step 2 says we're going to take each of those and set them equal to 0. So I'm taking each factor individually, and I have x plus 2 equals 0, x minus 7 equals 0, and I'm going to solve. I'm going to subtract 2 on the left one to get x equals -2, and add 7 on the right one to get x equals 7. So for this example, my excluded values or my restrictions on the domain are x equals -2 and x equals 7. Like I said before, you are responsible for doing this example 1 and example 2 on your own in order to get full credit for this activity. The next thing we talked about was simplifying rationals, and that's when we had some stuff we had to factor and cancel out. So there are 3 steps we're going to follow on this. Step 1 is that we're going to factor the numerator. Step 2, we're going to factor the denominator. Step 3 is that we're going to cancel out matching factors. There has to be one on the top and one on the bottom that match exactly to be canceled out. And then the fourth and final step is that you're going to rewrite the new simplified version without the canceled factors. So we have this example of x squared plus 6x plus 8 over x squared plus 2x. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to factor the top and the bottom. The numerator factors into x plus 2 times x plus 4. I needed factors of 8 that added up to 6. So 2 plus 4 gave me the 6, and 2 times 4 gave me the positive 8. I'm now going to do the same exact thing with the bottom of the fraction. I'm going to factor x squared plus 2x. This is not one of the normal factorings you're used to thinking about. This is actually your GCF. So when I look at x squared plus 2x, I need to see what they have in common. And they both have an x that I can pull out. When I do that, I need to see what's left over. So if I have x squared and I take an x out, I'm left with just 1x. If I have 2x and I take an x out, I'm just left with the 2. So now we're at the step where we're going to start canceling stuff out. In order to cancel it out, it has to look exactly the same in the top and the bottom. So first I'm seeing if I see x plus 2 anywhere else. And I do in the bottom, and since there's one on top and one on bottom, I can cancel them out. Now I have x plus 4 on top, and I don't see that anywhere else. And then left on the bottom, I have x, and I don't see an x all by itself. So I'm actually done, and I need to do my final step where I rewrite what's left. So on the very top of the fraction, I have x plus 4 over, and what's left over on the bottom is just x. And this is your final answer for simplifying. So again, you have 2 examples to do on your own. Remember, you have to do all of these to get your full credit. Now we're getting into some of the harder stuff with the rationals. We're going to start with multiplying rationals. We're going to get into dividing, and then finally adding and subtracting. So with these steps, I'm actually going to write one step and then do the steps so you can kind of follow along, and I'm going to do them in different colors. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to factor the top and bottom of every single piece we have here. We actually have 2 pieces here, this first one times the second one. So I'm going to go ahead and factor everything in the first one. I need factors of 8 that add up to 6. So I'm going to end up with x plus 2 times x plus 4. On the bottom, it's not a trinomial, so we have a GCF situation. I can divide 2x and 8 both by 2, and when I do that, I'm left with x plus 4. Now I need to factor the second one. When I have 4x plus 10, I can't take 4 out of both of them, but I can divide every piece by 2, and that leaves me with 2x plus 5. And on the bottom, I can divide 3 and 6 both by 3, and that leaves me with x plus 2. So step 2 that I have in green is where you're going to actually cancel factors, and that's what we just did on the last problem of simplifying. So when I go over to this problem, I'm looking for something that looks like the exact same on the top and the bottom. I see that I have an x plus 2 on the top here and x plus 2 on the bottom, so I cancel those out. I also see that I have an x plus 4 on top and bottom. And finally, I have these two 2's that are just by themselves, one on the top and one on the bottom, so I can cancel those as well. And your final step that we're doing here is we're multiplying across. So with fractions, we go across when we multiply. So when I'm looking here, I have everything canceled out in the top, and when that happens, I'm left with just a 1. So on the top, I have 1 times 2x plus 5. So that just leaves me with 2x plus 5. We have a similar situation happen here on the bottom. Everything cancels out. So again, you have 1. And now I have 1 times 3. So on the very bottom of the fraction, we have 3. And you leave it just like this. You don't do anything else with it. Again, you have your 2 examples, and we're going to move on to dividing now. So just like the last one, I am going to color code everything. Your step 1 still here is to factor the numerator and denominator. So on that first piece, x plus 1 does not factor, so we'll bring it down. X squared minus 9, though, is one of your difference of squares. So I take the square root of 9, and that's 3. So in one parentheses, I have x plus 3, and the second one, I have x minus 3. You still have this division. On the second one, again, x plus 1 stays, and I now need factors of 6 that add up to 5, and that's going to give me x plus 2 times x plus 3. Step 2 is that we're going to take that second piece and we're going to flip it. So what was the top is now the bottom, bottom is now the top. We're going to then turn that division sign into multiplication. So when I come over here, my first piece of x plus 1 over x plus 3 times x minus 3 stays the exact same. We didn't do anything with the first piece. But my second piece, I now have x plus 2 times x plus 3 on top and that x plus 1 on the bottom. And I've taken that division sign, and now it's a multiplication problem just like we did before. So step 3 is actually a couple different steps. It's just following the multiplying steps, which we've already done. So at this point, when we were multiplying, we're looking for factors that repeated in the top and the bottom. So when I look here, I see x plus 1 on top and bottom, so I cancel it. I don't see another x plus 2, but I do see an x plus 3 on top and an x plus 3 on the bottom. In this first piece, my top part canceled out all the way, so there's a 1 there. Same thing on my second piece, but on the bottom. We are now going to start multiplying stuff. So I have 1 times x plus 2. That leaves me with x plus 2 on top. Over, I have x minus 3 times 1. So that also leaves me with just x minus 3. I can't simplify this any further, so you are done. The last thing we're going to do for this video is adding and subtracting rationals. They do have similar steps. The subtracting ones are the harder ones, so I am going to do one of those, but you have a subtraction and addition one to try on your own. So your first step on this is you're going to look at all the pieces and you're going to factor all the denominators. So when I look at this first piece, I have 2x over x plus 2. That denominator actually can't factor any further, so we're going to leave it. Minus 3 over, I need factors of 6 that add up to 5. So x plus 2 times x plus 3. Step 2, we're then going to find what we call our final denominator. So what I'm going to do over to the side is I'm going to write final because we need to keep that in mind. It's going to be the denominator, so it's the bottom of the fraction. So I'm going to go piece by piece. The first thing I have is x plus 2. I don't have it over here in the final, so I am going to write it in parentheses, x plus 2. Now I go to the next piece. The first thing I see is an x plus 2, and I already have that here, so I'm not going to write it again. The next one is an x plus 3. I don't have that here, so I am going to go ahead and write x plus 3. And those are all the different pieces we have. So in the end, we want every single part of our problem to have x plus 2 times x plus 3 on the bottom. So I am going to do step 3, which is multiply by missing factors. I have 2 pieces here, and I already talked about how my final needs to have x plus 2 times x plus 3 in every single one. So I'm going to go ahead and write that. I'm going to have x plus 2 times x plus 3 on the first piece minus something over x plus 2 times x plus 3. Now I still have to figure out what I'm missing. So the first one has x plus 2 already. But in order to have x plus 2 times x plus 3, I need to multiply by that missing part. So I'm going to multiply the top of that fraction by x plus 3. So when I do that, I'm going to do 2x times x to give me 2x squared, 2x times 3 to give me plus 6x. Now, when I look at the second piece, I want there to be x plus 2 times x plus 3. There already is that, so I just bring that original top down. What you have to be super careful with in these subtraction problems is I'm taking a minus times whatever is here. So it's a minus 3, which would be 2x squared plus 6x minus 3. Sometimes you're going to have to distribute that negative to multiple things. Over, we bring down x plus 2 times x plus 3. I check to make sure it matches what I wanted in the end with my final, and it does, so this is your final answer. Remember, all of these problems that I left blank, you are in charge of doing on your own to help bring that test grade up. If you have any questions, talk to your teacher.